Hello, this is Lisa LeRose here on PRN-FM, and I'm joined by the most amazing, beautiful heart that I know, Michael J. Russ. And I'm so grateful that you're joining me today because astrologically, the moon conjoins Venus, so they call it Love Fest Day, and it's about feeling the love and then feeling the love some more, and gifting yourself today with a friend and reminding yourself that you are worth it and that it's about self-forgiveness and unconditional love, and I don't know anybody who exemplifies that more than you, Michael. So a big, big Love Fest Day to you, and welcome.
Fantastic. Just for, giggles, it's also National Margarita Day, so I just want to pass that on. But, yeah.
Well, that's good.
Love Fest Day. That's awesome. National Love Fest Day. I didn't even know there was a National Love Fest Day, honestly.
Well, it actually is every month when Venus conjoins with the moon, when it passes it crosses. So it may not be exactly every 30 days, but I'm not really quite sure what the path is. But it just happens to be that today. And
well, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because last night I was looking at the moon, the sliver of the moon yesterday, last night on the way home from dinner, and there was this big planet sitting right there to its northwest. And I believe that was Venus. I have a telescope. Yeah. Every once in a while I get out with a telescope and I look at the various, at Saturn and Venus and Mars. And it's always fun to look up into the heavens to actually see that those planets that we keep talking about exist and what they look like through the naked eye of a telescope. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I can imagine it's phenomenal through a telescope.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I'll look for that tonight.
Yeah, no, please, because part of what it does, it brings an exploration about what you've always believed to be true about yourself and helps to let those old beliefs go, which I really enjoy. And I haven't read his book yet, but I tuned into an audio of a gentleman. His name is Jim Quick. And, Michael, are you familiar with Jim Quick at all?
Why is that name familiar? Very familiar.
So he was a kid who was basically born normal, had an accident and had a brain injury, and was told that his brain was broken. And that was a thought virus, perpetrated by whomever, that he could not learn, and that he was, the teachers looked at him as the kid with the broken brain. He felt very, very left out. I think he struggled in school. Everything was very, very difficult for him. I mean, he had to learn a different way. And as you know, school doesn't always cater to the special needs children. They got to get you through. They got to deal with all the other kids in the classes and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that he found solace in was comic books, and he really loved superheroes. And it was the comic books that taught him how to read, which I thought was very, very fascinating because he envisioned himself having a superpower. And he went through school and he made it into college, but he still had difficulty learning. And then he found a mentor. And we've talked a lot in the past about finding a mentor. And this mentor basically helped him dispel that thought virus, that there was a different way that he could learn. And so he really got this, I don't know, just a burning desire to start reading as much as he could about different learning habits and ways to work and different strategies that could work for him. And he let go of all of those limiting beliefs. And what he does now is he mentors people on reading and learning and discovering things. And I thought that it would be really amazing because you and I have talked about things in the past about what it means to be your own hero. How do you find those superpowers, and where do you go with that? And it really spoke to me because I think there's so many I don't know. I see all Shazam is coming out, and when I was
true.
a kid,
Yeah.
I liked Shazam. I liked ISIS. I liked the idea that you could communicate with animals. I thought that would be the most amazing superpower to have. And here I am, how many years later, doing animal rescue, and on some level, I do connect with these animals and communicate with them. I don't have all of the superpowers of ISIS, certainly, but I think I emulated that. I watched that show so often, and I just, I'm like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want. And so, yeah, I just think that it's something that could be very transformative in a lot of people's lives, is to really understand and to be their own hero. And so, Michael, if you had a superpower or a superhero, who or what would that be?
Wow. I would say my superpower would be the very much along the lines of Jim's. It would be the gift of being able to help people connect with their own sovereignty and who they are, so that they could take it from there. I mean, if I could look people in the eye and simply, connect with them in a way that was where everything else was just fell by the wayside, and they got it the first time, and it was like an epiphany or an awareness. All of a sudden, their eyes would go wide as hubcaps, and they would. Oh, I get it. Help people to instantly gain an awareness of their own sovereignty, of the fact that this is their life, that they create their own reality in this life, and they can begin to work with it. And it's just such an empowering thing, and that's really what I would love to have the ability to do, is get that instant connection with people, so that and to enable them to do that. It's in some ways we do that through this podcast. I'm always harping on it in my own podcast, and between you and me and our audience, I had a friend just call me before this, about a half hour ago, before we started producing this episode, and she wanted to thank me because she binge listened to the last 6 episodes of my podcast, My Life Moves podcast, and she said, I want to thank you. I love you. You're so amazing. And she says, I love the way that you make it real, you keep it simple, and help me understand that I can be my own worst enemy, or I can be my own hero. And she actually used that word, which is interesting.
Wow.
And that's really true. We have this ability, and in my view, I've kind of written down some of the things in the research here about psychologically what a hero embodies. And the word that's not in there is sovereignty. You have to start there. You have to start with personal sovereignty, because in my view, once you know that you are the master of your own mind, body, and spirit, that is your purpose, to master your own mind, your body, and spirit, then everything else outside of that can kind of like fall into that fold. Alchemy falls into that. Being brave, taking steps yourself, being brave enough to step outside of your own comfort zone to enlighten yourself as to other modalities, perhaps, of wellness, looking after your own well-being, your own health, having the awareness and the presence of mind to know that something really isn't good to go into your body. You really shouldn't be putting that into your body, because decades down the line, it'll come back to hurt you. And I mean, I'm not talking about adopting one eating modality over another, vegetarian, vegan, paleo, all that kind of stuff. I'm just simply saying there are certain things we can all agree on that are really not good for you, and you really have to say, does this honor my body? Does this honor my body by drinking this soft drink, or this sugary that, or sugary this? Am I honoring myself by doing this? And when you're young, you think you're invincible. heck, I thought I was invincible when I was young. I can do anything. You can eat anything. You can go do anything. You can beat yourself up playing sports and doing other things. However, at some particular point, as my mother would say, it comes home to roost. It comes home to roost. And I had, about 35 years ago, I had the presence of mind to ask myself one simple question. And this is kind of like my superhero question, sort of, way back then. I asked myself, what did I want to feel like and look like when I was 60? Now, I was late 20s at the time. And the extension of that question is, once I asked myself that question, I said, yeah, I want to look great. I want to look like I haven't really beat myself up. I want to be healthy. I don't want to have knee problems. I don't want to have back problems. Of course, the time I actually asked myself this question, I actually did have back problems, and I've since eliminated them. Yeah, it's interesting, because I understood that, I found out that metaphysically, back soreness has to do with power, about giving away your power. Your lower back is your power center. So I think you know this, but our audience may not. It is your power center. So when you give away your power and you don't honor your own power, you basically feel it in the lower back in one way or another, and it can lead to serious things like herniated discs and blown discs and other stuff like that. I had herniated discs. However, what I'm saying here is that I had the presence of mind to ask myself that question, and then I said, okay, I've got to go through and take a look at my life, kind of assess what I'm doing, and cut out a few things that over the long term, I know right now, in 30, 40 years, are going to lead to a whole different person than I want to be. And so I cut some things out, just the simple stuff, fast food and soft drinks, number one, okay? Lots of sugars. I don't eat a lot of candy, unless it's dark chocolate, because I know dark chocolate, 70%, 80% or better, is really good for you as an antioxidant. So I cut that sort of stuff out, and I can honestly say, my own experiment, I've succeeded with my own experiment, that now when I'm 64, going on 65 in a few months, I feel awesome. I don't have any of those problems that manifest from not honoring your body when you're younger, so to speak. So the other thing, too, is that I was honest with myself. And honesty is one of those things, one of those attributes of a superhero. So you got to ask yourself, am I being honest with myself, or am I lying to myself? And a lot of people do lie to themselves. They think, I can just do this and I'm not going to feel anything. There'll be no consequences whatsoever. You just simply lie to yourself, because at the time, that thing, and it could be something, let's say you have a I don't want to get on any particular company, but you have a sweet roll every couple of times a week, right? Because you got to ask yourself, and I use the process of extrapolation in this whole superhero process. I say to myself, if I have one sweet roll a week, that's 52 a year. Extrapolate that out by 30 years, and how many sweet rolls have you eaten? How many soft drinks? I know people who have 2, 3, 4 soft drinks a day. Extrapolate that over a week, over a month, over 52 weeks, over 30 years, and see how much sugar you've actually ingested. All these things have consequences, right? Yeah, so it starts getting crazy. This is how I talk myself out of things, by the way, too. I just rationalize. If I eat this thing, I might eat it once. And if I make a habit of it, then I can simply, my mind starts, I take out my mental abacus and I start, tacking the little things, and I'm going, wow, okay, that's not going to be so good for me if I do that for the long haul. And that's how I keep myself straight and honest with myself. I don't lie to myself. Now, I will be completely honest and say, because that's the way I like to be, I have one donut a month. One. I like donuts. I love donuts. I have one donut a month. And that's it. Sometimes I go a couple of months without eating a donut. But I like the taste of it, right? So there's also, desserts in restaurants. There's a restaurant down here that's the absolute best key lime pie I've ever tasted in my life, and anybody else would say the same thing if it ate there. I may go there once a month, and if I do, sometimes I have a slice, sometimes I don't. Every 2-3 months, I may have a slice, just to treat myself, because it's not good to not treat yourself to something really good. It's long term. It's not an issue. What I like to do is, live by my own convictions and be brave about making decisions. And this is what sovereignty is. It's understanding that I am in control of my mind, what goes into it. We can get into all that if you want to. However, we have to develop a mental filter for negativity and what is influencing us, what is trying to subtly influence us with thought viruses. We have to make sure that we're in charge of what we're exposing ourselves to. It's interesting because Pam Gregory, who we talk about, and we've talked about her a couple of times, the astrologist from the UK, who I just listened to another really brilliant brilliant interview with her and another young lady who's got 6 best-selling books. And she does a lot of channeling, and her stuff is brilliant too. But it was a great interview, and I know I sent it to you. You might not have had the chance to listen to it yet. However,
I did.
What is
it was
interesting,
amazing. I loved it. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's like you look beyond some of the real complicated astrological stuff, which I'm not really adept to, and you read between the lines, and you'll understand the energetic trends astrologically, where we're at. And it's you can simply say, okay, I negate that, or I don't. However, the interesting thing about Pam that I thought, she said in this interview, I haven't listened to the news. I haven't watched the news in 7 years. It's been 7 years since she's watched the news, anything news related, media related. And she says, I feel so awesome. So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah. I mean, when I listen to the news, I listen to it with a filter. I don't invest in it emotionally. And I can watch something without it. I call it, in my book, Zero Adversity, I call it detached involvement. I practice detached involvement all the time. I can listen to people arguing and not mentally commit to investing anything in it. It's just a thing that's going on. Sort of like the train's going by. Okay, great. We watched it. It went by. That's pretty much what I can do. And I've trained myself to filter negativity and negative energies. It's like I put a barrier around myself. I don't allow them to impact me. And it allows me to go a lot of places and do a lot of things without being impacted by the adverse energies that may be around me. And,
Michael, I just want to say that that's a superpower right there. It is.
Yeah,
it
is.
It's actually honoring yourself and allowing yourself. You're saying, okay, that I see that as not being good for me. That's kryptonite to me. So
I love it.
I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna bring it into my field. I'm not gonna bring it in. I'm not gonna allow that to be part of my world. And I apologize, but I just wanted to interject that.
No, I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I don't even think about it as a superpower. I've been doing it so many years since I trained myself to actually do it. It's pretty amazing how I talk to people about it. I bring it up in my own podcasts, and I encourage people to develop that sense of detached involvement when they're out and about, because you've got to engage with the world. And negativity, you're not going to necessarily avoid negativity, other people's negativity. It's just not realistic. It's not a realistic goal. Otherwise, you just wouldn't leave the house, and you'd be in a bubble. You can surround yourself in your own home. You can create a bubble of positivity. However, somebody may come into your house that's not necessarily a friend or whatever. They may be a little adverse in terms of their own energy, and listen, however, not get involved in what's going on. It's interesting because when I talk to people about this, they say, oh, yeah, but how do you deal with all those things in the world? There was an earthquake that killed 45,000 people in Turkey, and how can you not respond to that in some emotional way? And I tell them something very simple. Close your eyes, focus on your heart, and send that energy to the entire region. Just blanket it in a white, loving energy. That's what you can do. Or you can also turn around and give money to an aid agency or whatever, or donate things that are going to go there. But the bottom line is that the only thing you ever can do for someone is give them love and light. That's it. That's what you can give to other people is love and light, and especially people who are under some sort of adverse circumstance, because it's not something you can control, and it's not your fault. It's not even their fault. There's just something that they're going through, and it's all how we perceive. We're taught in this society to perceive death as a bad thing, to perceive accidents as a bad thing, automatically defaulting to to lower frequencies when things happen to other people and even to yourself, which in my view is one of the major problems that we face as a society. Because if we live by the principle that everything happens for a reason, then we must then take that to the nth degree. And if something happens to you, you've got to ask yourself, well, what can I learn from this? Why did this happen to me from the perspective of it wasn't an accident? What does this mean to me? That kind of why and how. When you get knee-deep in the weeds of how and why did it happen to me, that kind of thinking is counterproductive to your own evolution. It's counterproductive. It keeps you spinning your wheels in quicksand. It's interesting if you start describing these words that really are attributes of a superhero or a hero, and you start saying, okay, how many of these actually apply to me? Now, I want to read these 12 words to you, and because they're really interesting. The first one is bravery. We talked about that earlier. Conviction, courage, determination, helpful, honesty, inspirational, moral integrity, protective, self-sacrifice, selfishness, strength. Now, if you turn those 12 words around and you point them right back at you, our audience members, right back at you, the question you have to ask yourself is, how many of these do I embody myself, towards myself? That's the question. And that's when it gets a bit sticky, because we always we tend to think of other people as being brave, but not ourselves. Not ourselves. We might say, I'm honest. That's not the tricky one. That's not the sticky one. Moral integrity could be a sticky one. Protective. Are you protective of yourself? Well, what does that mean to you? What kind of protection? Are you protective of your heart? If that's the case, do you want to be so protective of your heart that you don't open it up, that you don't make yourself vulnerable to opportunity? Yeah, see, it can get a little sticky, doesn't it? It just gets a little bit sticky. Self-sacrifice. Just a mirror. You can take these things, you can just point a mirror back. You can just reflect them all back at you and just ask: am I selfless? Am I strong? And there are a lot of people out there right now who don't believe they're strong. They believe they're weak because somebody told them that they were. Now, thought viruses can be intertwined with all of these words, and determination. As soon as somebody, you might think you've got determination until somebody you respect and love says, "Oh no, you don't have that," and you're like, "What?" And you start questioning yourself. And we have to get to a point. That's where the word sovereignty, in my view, comes into this whole picture, kind of like an umbrella for everything, because we have to understand that we're in charge. as I wrote the other day, you're driving the car of your own life. Is your hand on the wheel? Are your hands on the wheel? Or are they off the wheel and you let somebody else drive the car for you? The person sitting next to you, or that event sitting there. Is that driving your car for you? Where are you going to end up? We have to be very cognizant of these things about ourselves, about the fact that we are a star. We are a superhero. Mm-hmm. My last podcast was Time to Be a Star, and I actually, in some part of the podcast, I integrated, I substituted superhero for star, because they're one and the same. You're the star of your own movie. You're the superhero in your own life journey. You mm-hmm. are. The question is, do you see yourself as that? Do you perceive yourself as the superhero? And I would venture a guess that a lot of people really don't, because that's not a perspective that they adopt. But it should be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what is your superpower?
I always say that my superpower is wonder, because I wonder about things, and a lot of times it's a gateway for me. So I'll see something that I'm curious about, or that I question, or that I want to learn more about. And then I kind of go on this little trail, and it leads me. It's like little breadcrumbs. And so then what happens is I start getting a lot of different synchronicities in my life. Books will show up, or somebody that I'll meet, or I'll overhear a conversation. I'll be like, wait a minute, I was just wondering about that, and the universe responded that quickly. It's just amazing.
I love it.
It really is. It's a gift. And so I'm obviously not Wonder Woman, but I do call myself the Woman of Wonder. And when I write on a blog, that's what I sign as the Woman of Wonder. Because I do believe that when there is so much to wonder at, and things that are wondrous. And when I was in Tanzania, there was this building that had been abandoned. It had the House of Wonder. And I think I mentioned this before, and that's what I said I want to put above my house, the House of Wonder.
Hold on a second. Hey, step back a second. Are you telling me the House of Wonder was empty, abandoned?
It was. It was.
Okay, that's it.
I have a picture of it. It's just phenomenal.
Big oxymoron there.
Yeah, I do. I have to. I thought, when I saw it, it just stopped me dead in my tracks, and I thought, mm-hmm. oh my gosh, that's where I want to live. I want to live in the House of Wonder. And I think as a child, children come into this world, and if you've ever been around a 3-year-old, they'll ask you, well, why? Why is that? Why is this? What is that? What is this? And there's all sorts of questions because they're curious and they wonder about stuff, and everything is new and fresh. And I think in life we can approach every day like that. There's always something in your day. If you just take a moment to breathe and look around you, that is unique in all this world. Mm-hmm. And you've never seen before. I had some lilies. I love lilies, and I was gifted some lilies for Valentine's Day. And I've never had lilies like this ever. The one lily, when it opened, is over 9.5 inches. I've never seen, and
okay, that's big.
Is intoxicating. The aroma in my house. It literally, this bouquet of lilies has filled my house from top to bottom. And every time I look at this lily, I'm just like, I took a picture of it, and it doesn't even do it justice how amazing that it is. And then I look at it and I think, oh, what a gift. And I don't know. All the other lilies were normal-sized lilies, but this one was just unique, and all flowers are. So, I would encourage our audience to find something in your day that you can wonder at. If there's whether it be going to a museum or botanical garden or a walk in the park, I love to look at the trees on my walks in the park. They never cease to amaze me. They're all unique and different. The other day, one tree had been blown down. by the wins that we had. And I thought, oh, dear friend, but now it's gifting, it's going into another process, and it'll nurture the soil and it'll grow new trees. But I sort of felt this little pang at my heart because I see these trees. They become my friends. And I think that life, oftentimes we just get so busy and overwhelmed, and it's very difficult that we get so caught up in caring for other people that, as you said, Michael, we don't even know how to care for ourselves anymore. We don't think about what's important for us. And I think you just have to step back, and that instead of trying to be everybody else's superhero, that's why it's so important to be your own superhero, that you have to love yourself first. And we've talked about this, and to love yourself really unconditionally. And I've said it before that love is the most powerful force in the universe, bar none, and that we get separated from that. And I think that that's really, so if you have been separated from that feeling, maybe go into that space of wonder. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it, what is the smell of love to me? For me, it's lilies. I love lilies.
That's interesting.
And I think that there is some things that you're just drawn to, with your intuition, and that it helps get you through whatever it is. And I love the fact that you bring up bravery and courage, because sometimes for somebody, getting up in the morning and stepping out their front door takes a lot of courage. For many of us, we don't think about that. We don't really look at that in that same context. I had somebody that I just recently learned had passed on, and his nephew reached out to me, and I had some sort of a sense that something happened. And this gentleman was from Ecuador, and he had done some home improvement things for me. And Carlos was the epitome of somebody that was brave. He came to this country. He didn't speak English. He started this business. He had all of these different vehicles, and he took so much pride in everything he did. But the thing that I really admired about him is that he really wanted to know who you were and touch your heart with something. He always left me with something that kind of anchored me, and it always left me with a big smile on my face. He was the kind of person you just wanted to wrap your arms around and give them a hug. And what it served for me, Michael, though, is a reminder that no matter who it is that you meet, we didn't go out to dinner, we didn't do this, but I feel a loss. And I would like our audience members here, on Connect to Love, to recognize that you matter. You matter. You may not even recognize how it is that you gift somebody with your heart. And to really allow that, your light and your love to shine through. And I really feel that in my soul, that we can all be of service in some way. And so whether you look at yourself, ask yourself, how can I help myself today to be that superhero? How can I grow into not only loving myself, but if somebody gives you something, being able to receive that? I think that's a big part of it.
It is a challenge for a lot of people to say thank you because they don't feel worthy of it. We're worthy of the absolute best life has to offer us. It's really kind of interesting because my view is that everybody's already a superhero. They just need to step into the role. And because I think we're born superheroes, each and every one of us, regardless how they're born. You're going to find that the gentleman, Jim, we talked about earlier, who had an accident and his life was transformed. And as a result, he had to move off in a different direction as far as learning. And what it did then, and you say to yourself, okay, well, it's so sad. I'm so sorry for that it happened to Jim, and is he going to be okay? You can sit there and feel sorry for him. However, that isn't really what's important. Is what Jim thinks of himself. And in my view, Jim, at some particular point, started thinking of himself as a superhero, the hero in his own life play. That's what he started, and that is a pivotal moment in everyone's life. That's Absolutely. The pivotal moment, and it can happen at any given time. I wrote down the word "beaten down" when you were talking, because people, this is what life. This is how I characterize your outer world. It can just beat on you. It can just beat on you, and for some people, they succumb to it, and they say, okay, I'm done. I can't get out. I can't walk out the front door anymore, or I'm just going to go to work and just do the minimum and get by, or I'm just going to get by in life. I'm going to settle. I'm going to settle for this because, hey, there's nothing better, and for me out there in the world, there's no better life that I could live. This is what I call being beaten down by your outside influences, and no matter what they are. And we have to, at some particular point in our lives, come to the agreement with ourselves that we're going to be more. We're going to be more. And that's, to some people who get hit with that cosmic 2x4, like Jim, and you're in a situation where you have a serious learning disability, that the cosmic 2x4 moment is unfortunately what I think the greater number of people need to happen before they say, that's it, I'm done. I need to move. I'm going to be my superhero now. I'm no longer going to allow this to control me, how I feel, what I'm thinking, how I characterize myself and what I'm capable of, and any of the actions I take or the responses that I make to what happens in my life. Your superhero moment's a moment for me. That's really the case. It's not a once a day, once a week. You either consider yourself a superhero and you live from that persona of who you are. You are the star of your own play. You are the superhero in your own life movie, or you're not. And sometimes during the day you are, and sometimes during the day you may not be. Now, here's something very interesting that, and I was listening to an NPR program kind of talking along about this, something that was parallel to this. And I've always said that it's not, there's that old adage of, it's not what happens, it's how you respond to what happens. However, what's really important is not that and they were talking about fear, actually. This particular show was talking about fear and feeling fear, being fearful, and how we all know that you and I know it, and anybody who's in the inspirational world knows that fear means false evidence appearing to be real, the unknown, the unknown quotient, right? So what she said, something very interesting, is I've been saying this for a long period of time. Lower frequencies are natural. They're natural. It's not. I don't think it's a worthwhile. If you set the high bar of I'm never going to experience lower frequencies, then it's not going to happen. It's not something that is it's not real to be. There's another word I'm looking for that's not coming to my head at this particular point, but it's not real. It's not a valid way of living life. You are going to experience lower frequencies. It's not that you feel them. It's important. It's how quickly you can transform them. That's what's important.
Absolutely.
And so when we live, when we're not a superhero, it's not beating ourselves up because we're not being a superhero. It's how quickly you can get back to being a superhero. That's what's important, because we're all going to be in that situation where we initially respond not as a superhero, right? So the victim, we'll play the victim for a minute or two, and the question is, how quickly can our awareness bring us to the point where we recognize what we're doing, and then we turn around and we transform through our own inner alchemy from being the victim to being the superhero. And that is, to me, that's the way you live life, because we're always going to have those situations. You know, we're always going to happen. I mean, it's true. This earthquake that happened, it just got worse and worse. It's still getting worse because they had another one. And these are world disasters. The tsunami that occurred back in the early 2000s or the late 90s? The tsunami, it's killed 250,000 people in a day. You know, loss of this airliner, loss of that airliner, 300 people, 500 people, whatever it is. These things occur. And we're all going to initially have a reaction that is not necessarily going to be in the realm of the higher frequencies. We're going to say, oh, dang, you're going to be angry. Why didn't they check that thing? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Why did this happen? How could this happen? You know, you might be there for a few minutes, but you gotta figure out, okay, fine. All right, I've said my piece. I've been there. Now I'm going to move. I'm going to do something positive about this. I'm going to send these people some love, some light. I'm going to sit down for a moment. I'm going to focus on seeing these people wrapped in comfort, wrapped in a blanket of love, okay? And you can do that for a split second. The energy is there. Just seeing that energy come from you to them, no time, no space. It happens, right? We have to have that belief that you know, we don't have to be next to them giving them a hug. That's not really possible. What is possible is that if we all turn around and we, as a collective, took our time to just close our eyes for a few minutes, a couple minutes, and we focused on that happening, focused on them blanketed by love and by light and by comfort. And I in my view, that works. It works for them and it works for you. You can send that superpower of love that we all have, and that's definitely something we can agree upon. We all have love. Okay? We have that, and love can move mountains. I've heard it in a song. Okay? Love can move mountains. And did you miss that joke? Come on now. Love can move mountains. I heard it in a song. Come on. That's crazy. Come on. I'm like, I didn't get a reaction. I'm going, wait a minute. That's just part of my little humor that I come up with every once in a while. But on the spur of the moment. But that's really true. Love can do a lot of things. It can move mountains. It can heal the soul. It can do a lot of things. It can do those things that other things can't do. It can do what money can't do. Love can do what money cannot do.
Right.
Every time.
I'm glad, though, that you brought it up, because I think that, and it's important to note that all emotions, as being human, are valid. So you can be a superhero and cry. You can be a superhero and feel pain. There is, and I think what it is you have all of these different possibilities, and I've heard something that you change it from possibility into probability, which I really liked that idea, because there's different strategies and that you can transmute things through. And I don't know if you have ever read the book or heard of the book 90 Minutes in Heaven, but it was about a gentleman. His name was Don Piper, and he was a minister, and he was in an accident. He had been at a conference with all of these other ministers and was on his way back home, and a semi-truck collided with him at the scene. And he was actually pronounced dead at the scene. And what was so interesting, there were other ministers that came back, and the one gentleman actually put his hands on him and began to pray. And what I found so fascinating about the story is he did, come back to life, but it was not without pain, and like extreme pain, and a long journey of recovery. And one of the things, he was in the hospital, and people would bring him things, and he had always been there as a rock for his parish, and he had a lot of emotions that he went through, and he didn't receive things from people very well. And then one day, somebody brought something in, and he was being, feeling sorry for himself, or just being, human. And he said, and somebody said to him, you know what, you're really being selfish at this. you've allowed all these other people, you've given and given and given, but you won't allow them to give to you. And
right.
I have never forgotten that part of the book. I mean, there's lots of parts of it. It was one of those books. I think I read it in an evening because it was just so phenomenal. But I think that whatever it is in being your own superhero, it's about owning it. It's about owning your truth. And Michael, for our audience members, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you own something, or to allow it to be valid and not apologize for what you're experiencing.
Interesting. I'm going to be the first one to say that I've really never had anything like that happen to me. And there's a lot of other people who could probably answer this question who've moved through it more than I have. It's an interesting question. And one that I can only say, if you're owning, we part of sovereignty is owning, being accountable and responsible for what happens in your life, what happens to you, what happens around you, what you do to others. It's everything. Because if the gentleman who wrote the 90 Minutes in Heaven, he was on the road. He chose to be on the road at that particular point in time, and that happened to him. It's undeniable that that's the case. So did he have a hand in being there? Yeah. Was he responsible for driving the truck? No. He was responsible. You can always find some shred of responsibility for everything that occurs in your life. You chose to leave the meeting at that particular time. You chose to leave the house. You chose to wake up at the point where you woke up. You set the alarm. If the alarm had gone off an hour later, would you have gotten up and gone out and gotten in that car accident? Likely not. However, that's not what happened. So you have to go back, and I call it the principle of absolute ultimate responsibility. And when you start living from that, then it makes life easier, because you're not so quick to blame other people, and you're actually putting yourself in the most perfect position to employ forgiveness. That is really what it's all about. It's a challenge for most people to see themselves as being responsible in some small way for everything that happens in their life. And that's kind of where I would begin. It's where I begin when little things happen. If something like that were to happen, pity parties are ubiquitous. They're things that occur all the time. People want to have a pity party, blame someone else, whatever, don't want to accept where they are. I'm a person that is really rather quick to accept where I am, because I've trained myself to understand that now is where things begin, not 20 minutes ago, a half hour ago, 10 days ago. I can change my future by changing my thoughts right here, right now. And if that needs to happen, then I do it. Whenever I get to that point of realization, that's when it happens. And we're all human, and we're going to. That's why I said earlier, we do live in lower frequencies all the time. We visit that barren desert, and when we don't like it, we move to Shangri-La, right? We have the ability to go from that barren desert to Shangri-La in the snap of a finger, just by our own thinking, by changing our own thought process. And it's so beautiful. And that I spend most of my time really when I'm out and about and with people or whatever. This stuff is always on my mind. Always on my mind. I'm always cognizant of how people are feeling and what they're saying about themselves and in relationship to what's going on in life. And there's a lot of joking. I always like to say that you can't disguise bad self-talk with a joke, because your mind doesn't understand the joke, and neither does your reality. If you're talking about manifesting Shangri-La and you're joking about the fact that you're not in Shangri-La, that you're in a desert, if you're saying I'm in a desert and you're joking, your mind doesn't understand. Your mind's going to respond to what you say I am to, not the joke. If you say I am in the desert, that's where you're going to be. If you're saying I'm sick, that's what you're going to manifest. Hence hint, hint, I never say that.
Right.
I will never admit that I am sick, ever. It's not going to come out of my mouth, except for just a couple
I love
moments
the
ago.
words out of balance. I even with the big C word, in my health practice, I always said to people, you don't have cancer, you're out of balance. And that, you take the emotional charge away from that. And it's an imbalance. You need to find the right tools, whether it be supplements, spirituality, a really great doctor who has a different vision. Yeah.
Right. Positivity. There's so many different modalities, but it's in your mind, your thinking. You get to the heart of the thinking that led to the disease. How much anger are you holding on to? How much, what has happened to you in the past that you won't let go of? There's a lot of things that can happen to create more bad cells than good cells in our body that can turn our bodies on itself. I realize that science is doing a whole lot of different things with regard to cancer research and other stuff. However, it all starts with we have to focus on what we can control, and we can control what we're thinking about ourselves and our own bodies. That's just, again, that's part of sovereignty. Exactly. You're going to let somebody else tell you, or you're going to it's the number one thing that I tell people generally. I have a friend who's a cancer survivor, and and I told her when she moved out here to get a fresh start from California, I let her stay in my condo for a couple of years so she could get going. And I said, I don't want to hear anything about you surviving cancer. I don't want you to identify with cancer. I want you to identify with health. Everything you do is about optimum health.
Fantastic.
Your thinking, your mindset. Don't ever begin a conversation with I'm a cancer survivor. Because what you say I am to, you are. Okay? You don't want to identify with that. If that becomes your identity, if you had an eating disorder and you've gotten through it, that's not who you are. It was something you were. It was something that it's in your past. It's in your rear view mirror. It's no longer part of you. You've transformed who you are, your thinking, your body, everything, how you respond, how you react to things. You've changed all that. And that's what you work to do. So why would you identify with that going forward? And if you're going to help people doing it, then come from the perspective of this is not who you are. You're the identity of somebody who has cancer. Don't identify with that. That's not who you are. Cancer thriver. You're a thriver, not a survivor. You're a person. You're a thriving individual. You're healthy again. And
amen.
We don't say that. We don't say that when we broke my leg. I'm a broken leg survivor. No, we don't do that. We don't identify with anything other than the big C. We I'm this, I'm that.
I just said that to somebody the other day. They broke their finger, and I said, depends, because she's like, well, I'll probably need surgery, and I'll need this, and I'll need that. And I said, well, why don't we try this instead? I'm broken.
Yeah.
When she went to the doctor, guess what? It can just be splinted. She doesn't need surgery, which is a blessing. It's absolutely a blessing.
But the default was always the worst.
Yeah, but what's so interesting, I met this young lady today, actually, right before we did the show, and I was so blown away by her. And it was the first time I met her. Cool. But in the short conversation that we had, I learned that she had a personal trauma, and she was a performer on Broadway, and she made herself a promise after this trauma she would never sing again. And I thought, oh my gosh. And
really?
She went through sort of this dark night of the soul and really was questioning a lot of things. And what she said to me was so beautiful, Michael. She said, I had this moment where she said, I decided that I was going to be born again, that this was going to be my first day of my new life. And I'm starting my life from here. And I thought, good for you. And so now she's in a musical here, And so I'm going to go see your performance. Like I said, it's the first time. I'm like, you know what? The performance is Godspell, which I don't know any of the music for, but I thought, an interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I just know that there's imagery. It was like from the 70s, so I'm going to have to kind of learn about the story. But I just, it was a new gateway, and I think that every one of us, I mean, every day can be the first. There's that saying, every day is the first day of the rest of your life, and it really is.
It is. That's
today,
true.
Today,
yeah,
we begin
Maya
again.
Angelou had a quote around that. It is. And picking up on that, why not approach every day like that when we wake up? Why should we drag yesterday into today? Yesterday is gone. Why not look at this as being every day? When you wake up in the morning is the greatest day ever. It's the first day and the greatest day of your life. Why can't it be? Who says so? It's interesting because I guess 38 years of training yourself to do that, because that's what I've done in my businesses. There's so much that I don't control, so I just wake up in the morning and go, today's an awesome day, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be amazing. And whether that's a pair of glasses I put on, the lens I view the world through on that particular given day, and I find it's important to not gauge your how you feel about your day by how much money you made, how successful you were at something. It can be that is a trap, I think, that society puts us in, that a trap of thinking where if we didn't achieve something, if we didn't succeed at making money or whatever, we really haven't had an amazing day. And to me, the young lady you met, that makes your day amazing. And it's so, I mean, that trumps everything. That's the bar you just jumped over at 10 feet, right? As a high jumper, that's just, it doesn't get any better than that. It really, really doesn't. And learning about that sort of thing from people, and it's a focus. To me, it's a focus. And as a superhero, you do have to have of your own life. You have to have an awareness and a focus on the attributes that you're embodying every single day, and live from them, instead of just having them be something that's written somewhere, written in your journal. Live from them and attempt to embody them when things happen. Step back.
Just gives me shivers, Michael. It really does. And you know what? It just occurred to me, like, how you get that like V8 moment where you slap your head and you go, oh my goodness. And one of the songs from Godspell was Day by Day. Day by Day.
Oh gosh, that's a great song. By the way, I'm going to simply throw this out there that we've got about 60 seconds left in the show. However, based on the time that we started, but I'm gonna, because I've been keeping track. I want to make sure we don't run over. We've got so many great pearls in this show of wisdom. I'm simply going to say that Day by Day, that's an awesome song. I know I've seen the show, I've never heard the music, but it's been 40 years. So enjoy the show, and I want to hear about it on a future show. Okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not till April.
Now you're going to close. You're going to close right now. I always close, but I want to hear because you brought up the concept of superhero for the show today. So why don't you close out the show in this next 45 seconds?
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful for all of you tuning in to us here on PRN-FM on Connect to Love. I truly believe that if you are a person who is your own superhero, you need to recognize and know that you are worth it. You are worthy. You have courage. You can do anything that you want to. And I believe and I'm going to use your words again, Michael, because I just cannot get enough of them. And it's Michael J. Russ's personal mantra. I love myself. Right? Am I getting it wrong?
Yeah.
Right?
If you look in the mirror, you say, I love you, you can do anything.
I love you, I can do anything.
If you're in your car, true. Yeah.
I love you, I'm a superhero, I can do anything. And I'll leave you with that. And Yeah. Blessings to you all. Thank you so much.
Love and light. Ciao.